So I recently saw a video from Nintendine about Nintendo Switch 2 buyer's remorse. And yeah, I know this channel kind of became the bottom of the barrel for Switch 2 content, going from genuine criticism early on, to straight up grifter rage bait regurgitating the same points over and over again, but I thought his recent video wasn't that bad, so I kind of wanted to give my take on it, since a lot of other YouTubers are also bringing this topic up of people regretting their purchase of buying a Switch 2. And while I think it is perfectly fair for someone to regret their purchase, I think that sentiment that most people regret it is kind of blown out of proportion. And I get it. I understand why some people would have buyer's remorse. I think it's perfectly fine for people to be disappointed in Nintendo right now. The prices of a lot of games are absolutely insane. $70 is now the standard, with some games like Mario Kart World even being $80. Amiibos are now $30 to $50, and games like Bonanza or Pokemon Legends Zaza are getting overpriced DLC. I can understand why a lot of people would be upset right now. A lot of people are being priced out of things, and Nintendo is no longer the affordable gaming alternative they once were. And then there are also other things as well, like some third-party games aren't performing as well as people thought they would. It's not that bad in my opinion, but I can understand why some people would be concerned by like Madden or what we've seen of Elden Ring so far, since it is a little rough. And there's also things like not every Switch 1 game getting an upgrade. Like, I think it is the expectation for like a console like the Switch 2, the direct successor to the Switch 1, to have most games kind of get an upgrade on the Switch 2. I can understand why Nintendo hasn't made upgrades for every game, but I can still understand the disappointment for that. But yeah, even though I understand why some people would regret their purchase, I personally don't regret it, and I feel like a lot of people would feel a similar way. One reason is the fact that we're getting a lot of games. Games are the most important part of a console after all. Sure, you can make the argument that a lot of upcoming games that we're getting are more niche than something of the likes of 3D Mario or Zelda, but I honestly don't really mind or care. My expectations weren't extremely high, so I was satisfied. It's good to have some expectations, especially for a new console, but I feel like expecting something of the caliber of the Switch 1's Zelda and 3D Mario in year 1 is a bit unreasonable when you look at how Nintendo's internal teams operate and what they're working on and what they've released over the past few years. I think our current lineup is completely reasonable for a new console. A new Mario Kart game, while underwhelming, it's still pretty fun, and I feel like some people will at least be satisfied with that. A 3D Donkey Kong made by a large portion of the Odyssey team, that's absolutely incredible, and I would say on the same level of quality, if not better than Odyssey. So I definitely think a lot of people would be satisfied by that as well. And then we're getting Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, and then a sequel to Kirby Air Ride developed by Sakurai. And while it's reasonable to call this more niche than something of the likes of Mario, I think it still has a decent amount of appeal. It's developed by Sakurai, a very well-known developer, so hardcore audiences will be interested. I'm already seeing a lot of Smash fans who are interested in Kirby Air Riders. Kirby as a character is also growing in popularity. Forgotten Lands sold really well, and Nintendo is starting to treat Kirby as a top-tier franchise. Alongside Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, and Splatoon, they're no longer excluding him from the Big 4, or Big 5, or Big 7, or whatever you call it. They're no longer excluding him from that. They're putting Kirby on Nintendo Alarmo, they're doing a Nintendo Today theme with Kirby. They're no longer excluding him or separating him into something else, like they kind of do with Pokemon. So they're really kind of considering Kirby as a core Nintendo character now. And I feel like, as a result, that will kind of help future Kirby games like Air Riders have a decent amount of appeal among casual audiences. But then we also have Metroid Prime 4, and yeah, I know Metroid isn't the biggest seller, but I do feel like Metroid Prime 4 will have a bigger impact just due to how long we've been waiting and just how big the build-up has been. Then we also have Mario Tennis Fever, which, yeah, it's Mario Tennis, and Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, yeah, it's a 2D game, but I feel like these games kind of flesh out the lineup. It's good to have some smaller titles in between some of the larger titles, and Yoshi and the Mysterious Book does look pretty good, and the new Mario Tennis game looks more promising than the sports games on Switch 1. And then we have Splatoon Raiders, which is a spin-off of Splatoon, which is pretty cool, honestly. Compare that to the Wii U, which had New Soup and then a massive gap until we had games like Game & Wario, then Pikmin 3, and some other small titles mixed in. I think the Switch 2 lineup is pretty good compared to that. We're really not having many problems with that. A lot of these games may not seem huge, but I think it's fair for Nintendo to get experimental. They can't keep relying on their usual heavy hitters, so it's fair for them to put out a larger budget into some of these more niche ideas. And I personally love when Nintendo is weird and experimental with new games. It's partially the reason why I love the GameCube so much. You could say that Nintendo doesn't have much soul nowadays, and while that is true for some parts of the company, you can't deny that Nintendo's games can still get pretty weird and wacky sometimes, especially with games like Wonder and Bonanza. I honestly think Nintendo is doing a similar thing here with the Switch 2 to what they did during the GameCube era. And of course, I don't speak for everyone, but I'm honestly just satisfied if a game is fun and relatively worth my purchase. I don't need it to be a big, bombastic, massive seller like Zelda in order to be satisfied. Like Donkey Kong Bonanza specifically was absolutely worth the purchase for me, and is the highlight of the Switch 2 so far because of how enjoyable and well designed it is. I am definitely satisfied with that, and even Mario Kart World is pretty fun despite being overpriced. And some things being overpriced isn't exactly a deal breaker for an entire console for me. Sure, a lot of things are overpriced, like Mario Kart and the Amiibo, but I think there are some things that are a little more acceptable, and I feel like the games being overpriced doesn't really make the console necessarily bad for me, or doesn't necessarily mean that I regret getting the console itself. I think it's really more of an annoyance. If anything, it would be more of a deal breaker for the games rather than the console itself. But speaking of the console, I'm actually satisfied by the console despite its issues. It's very durable and well designed, it's larger and more comfortable than the Switch 1, and I'm mostly satisfied with how games perform and the power of the console overall. I think it's a decent upgrade from the Switch 1. And even though it's expensive, I do feel like I'm getting my money's worth, since I could see myself using this for years. And for me personally, I'm sure some people would agree, but it would be a bit silly to regret getting a console right after it released, because of course it wouldn't have too much going on during the first year. Like, it's eventually going to have a large library and a lot of different things going on, like the Switch 1. I understand why people regret it for a lot of different reasons, but like, the Switch 2 not having too much going on, that's kind of to be expected for a new console, so that's just kind of how I feel about it. So, for me personally, I really don't feel buyer's remorse for getting the Switch 2, and I don't even just feel that way because I'm a Nintendo content creator. I am genuinely enjoying the console and the games releasing for it. But I'm curious to hear what you think. Do you regret buying a Switch 2 if you have one, or not? Let me know down in the comments. And anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Blue Sky if you want to. Stay perky!